It was late in the evening when the streets had emptied, and a quiet stillness had settled over the small town. The last hints of sunlight had faded, leaving only the cold, pale glow of the street lamps to guide anyone who happened to be walking outside. For one woman, the night felt heavier than usual. Her steps were hurried, but uncertain. Each sound, every distant footstep, every rustle of leaves made her heart skip a beat. She had been traveling all day, trying to reach home, but fate had other plans. She had taken a longer route than usual, thinking it would save time, but now she realized it had only led her further from safety. Her eyes scanned the quiet streets nervously. She knew that being alone at this hour was risky. The shadows seemed deeper, stretching across alleyways and doorways in ways that made them look almost alive. Her mind raced with memories of past dangers, times when trust had been broken or help had been withheld. She had learned the hard way that strangers could be dangerous, and yet, in moments like this, she had no choice but to hope for kindness from someone unknown. As she walked, she noticed a figure up ahead, a man, tall and broad-shouldered, standing near the edge of the sidewalk. He seemed calm and unhurried, unlike her, whose nerves were taut with tension. She slowed her pace, unsure whether to turn away or approach. The streets were mostly empty, and her options were limited. The man noticed her hesitation and took a small step forward. Though he did not seem threatening, instead, there was something in his posture, something quiet, careful, and aware that suggested he was observant and deliberate. "Are you all right?" he asked gently, his voice calm but firm. The woman stopped in her tracks. She wasn't sure if she should answer. Strangers asking questions in the dark usually meant trouble, she thought. But there was something in his eyes, honesty, perhaps, or simply a lack of aggression that made her hesitate. She nodded slightly, her voice caught somewhere between caution and relief. I just need somewhere safe for the night," she admitted softly. Her words were careful, almost whispered, as if saying them louder might make them less true or might draw danger closer. The man's expression did not change, but his eyes softened. He didn't ask questions, didn't try to judge or demand explanations. Instead, he simply said, "I can offer you a place to stay. Just for the night. You'll be safe." For a moment, she didn't move. Her mind spun with doubts and fears. The night had already been long, and exhaustion weighed her down. But trust did not come easily. She had learned to rely on herself and to be cautious around strangers. Yet the night air was cold, and the shadows seemed to stretch endlessly ahead. Her options were running out, and the promise of safety, even temporary, was tempting. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of hesitation, she nodded. The man offered a small, reassuring smile and gestured for her to follow. As they walked together down the quiet streets, the woman kept a careful distance. She was alert, aware of every sound and movement, but she also felt a strange sense of relief. For the first time in hours, she felt that perhaps she would not have to face the night entirely alone. The man's presence was steady and unobtrusive. He didn't speak unnecessarily, didn't make sudden movements or try to dominate the conversation. His calmness had a way of grounding her anxiety. Occasionally, he would glance at her to make sure she was keeping pace, but never in a way that seemed controlling. It was simply a check, a reassurance that she was safe to continue walking. As they neared his modest shelter, she noticed small signs of preparation that hinted at his thoughtfulness. The windows glowed softly, with warm light, and a faint smell of cooking lingered in the air. She realized that the man had probably anticipated the chill of the night, and perhaps even the possibility of an unexpected guest. It was a small comfort, but an important one. In moments like these, little gestures mattered more than grand promises. Her thoughts drifted back to her own life, to the journey that had led her here. She had faced challenges before, had navigated streets and situations that seemed impossible to survive. But tonight felt different. The uncertainty weighed heavier. Not because the night itself was darker, but because she could not predict the intentions of the man who had offered her shelter. And yet, despite her caution, she felt a tiny spark of trust, a fragile hope that some people could truly be kind without expecting anything in return. The man opened the door to his home with a quiet click and gestured for her to enter first. She stepped inside, her senses immediately noticing the warmth that contrasted sharply with the chill outside. The interior was simple but neat, filled with soft light that seemed to promise safety without needing to be spoken. He followed her in, ensuring that the door was closed behind them, and then stepped back, giving her space. There was a short pause. Neither spoke immediately. The woman could feel her heart pounding, a mix of relief and lingering fear. She realized how tired she truly was, the tension in her muscles, the ache in her legs from walking hours on end, the fatigue that had been building for days. For the first time in hours, she allowed herself to take a deep breath, feeling the air warm and safe around her. The man finally spoke, his voice calm and steady. "You can rest here. I'll make sure you are safe until morning." The words were simple, but they carried weight. They were not empty promises or vague assurances. There was a seriousness in his tone, a quiet determination that made her believe he would keep his word. She nodded, silently acknowledging the trust she was placing in him. It was not easy, but at that moment, it felt like the only reasonable choice. As she moved further into the small space, she noticed small touches that showed care: blankets folded neatly, a chair pulled out as if ready for her to sit, and a small kettle quietly steaming on the stove. The man had not made a grand show of preparation, yet every detail spoke volumes. It was not wealth or luxury that mattered here, but intention. The space was safe, simple, and functional, a haven for the night. She settled into the corner of the room, grateful for the warmth and the quiet. Her body relaxed slightly, though her mind remained alert. She knew that trust was a delicate thing, built slowly and easily broken. And yet, in that quiet room, under the soft glow of the lamp, she felt something she had not felt in a long time: relief. Relief that someone had offered her kindness without expectation, and relief that she had allowed herself to accept it. The night stretched on, quiet but filled with unspoken thoughts. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees, and the occasional distant sound of a car passing reminded her that the world was still moving, even in the late hours. Inside, the man kept his distance, giving her space to rest while remaining close enough that she could feel safe. It was a delicate balance, and it mattered more than either of them could say. By the time sleep began to overtake her, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. She had faced uncertainty, fear, and exhaustion. But she had also encountered a rare act of trustworthiness. It was a reminder that even in the darkest moments, small acts of integrity and kindness could make a profound difference. And though she did not yet know what the morning would bring, she held on to the knowledge that tonight, at least, she was safe, and that sometimes, safety is the first step toward hope. The man, meanwhile, moved quietly through the room, making sure she was comfortable without drawing attention to himself. He did not speak unnecessarily, did not offer unsolicited advice, and did not make her feel beholden to him. He simply ensured that she could rest, that the promise he had made simple, clear, and honest was fulfilled. As the night deepened, the woman finally allowed herself to close her eyes, feeling the warmth of the room and the quiet assurance of her safety. It was not a perfect night, nor was it free from fear, but it was enough. Enough to rest, enough to trust, and enough to remember that even in the darkest hours, there are people who honor their word, who keep promises, and who offer safety without expecting anything in return. The night had settled fully over the small shelter, wrapping the world outside in a quiet darkness. Inside, however, the atmosphere was calm, but filled with a subtle tension that neither the woman nor the man could completely ignore. The hours passed slowly, measured not by clocks but by the gentle flicker of light from the lamp and the occasional whisper of wind against the walls. Though the room was warm and safe, the woman found it hard to relax completely. Her mind replayed fragments of the day, the journey that had brought her to this place, and the uncertain paths that might lie ahead once morning arrived. She sat quietly on a simple wooden chair, hands folded in her lap, her body tense from exhaustion and vigilance. Even though she had accepted the man's offer of shelter, the shadow of her own experiences made trust feel like a fragile, delicate thing. She had lived long enough to know that promises could be broken easily, and that appearances were not always what they seemed. Yet, in this quiet room, she also sensed something rare, an honesty in his presence that made her cautious hope begin to flicker. The man, for his part, moved about the room with a careful calmness. He did not attempt to engage her in conversation immediately, nor did he demand anything from her. Instead, he attended to small, simple tasks, adjusting the blankets so they lay neatly, ensuring the fire in the stove kept a steady warmth, and quietly preparing a light meal. Each action was deliberate, measured, and unobtrusive, showing that his concern was for her comfort rather than for attention or recognition. Finally, he placed a small plate of food on the table and gestured toward it. "You should eat something. You've had a long day," he said softly. His tone was neither commanding nor insistent. It was gentle, practical, and considerate. The woman glanced at the plate, hesitant at first. Years of caution and survival instincts had taught her to be wary, even when offered kindness. But the scent of the warm food, combined with her deep exhaustion, made her realize she could not refuse. She sat down and began to eat slowly, savoring the warmth and nourishment. The simple act of sharing a meal, even in silence, created a subtle bridge between them, a quiet acknowledgement of human connection and trust. As she ate, small fragments of conversation began to emerge, tentative and careful. She spoke first, not revealing too much of herself but offering hints of the journey that had brought her here. She mentioned the long walk, the roads she had taken, and the unexpected turns that had left her stranded. Each word was measured, cautious, as if speaking too freely might undo the fragile sense of safety she had begun to feel. He listened quietly, nodding occasionally but not interrupting. His responses were few but meaningful questions that showed he was paying attention, observations that reflected his understanding, and comments that never judged or criticized. There was a patience in his manner that made her feel heard, something she had not experienced in a long time. Slowly, the tension in her shoulders began to ease, replaced by a cautious comfort in his presence. The night deepened, and with it came a sense of shared quiet. Words were no longer necessary. The silence itself carried meaning. She could feel the man's attentiveness without needing constant reassurance. He remained close enough to be a presence she could rely on, yet distant enough to respect her space and autonomy. It was a delicate balance, and it spoke volumes about his character. As the hours passed, fragments of her story began to surface. She did not speak of everything, only hints of loss and struggle moments that had tested her strength and resilience. She mentioned times when she had been alone, when help had not come, and when she had had to rely solely on herself. The man did not push for more, nor did he offer unsolicited advice. Instead, he listened, allowing her to share only what she felt ready to reveal. Each word she spoke was a small act of courage, a step toward trusting someone again after long periods of self-reliance. At one point, she paused, her eyes lingering on the window where the night outside seemed endless. "It's strange," she said quietly, almost to herself. "I've met so many people who promised help and then disappeared. But tonight, it feels different." He looked at her with a calm expression, neither pleased nor surprised. "Not everyone keeps promises," he said simply. "But some do. And tonight, you have a choice to trust that." His words were not meant to lecture or comfort artificially. They were simple, truthful, and steady. For the first time in hours or perhaps days, she felt a sense of stability. The tension that had weighed heavily on her chest began to ease, replaced by a fragile but growing sense of hope. The conversation drifted naturally, moving from practical matters directions, the roads ahead, and places of safety, to lighter topics. She spoke of memories from her past, small moments of happiness she had tucked away. He shared little about himself, only enough to convey that he too had seen hardships and understood the challenges of life. The exchange was careful, measured, and respectful, creating a space where trust could begin to grow without being forced. As the night progressed, fatigue finally began to take hold. Her eyelids grew heavy, and her body, tense for so long, began to relax. Yet even as she prepared to rest, she felt a lingering wariness. Trust had not been fully earned overnight, and she knew that vigilance was still necessary. But for the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a night without fear, a few hours of safety where she could simply be. The man noticed her slowing movements and offered a quiet gesture toward a nearby corner, where blankets were folded neatly on the floor. "You can rest here," he said. "I'll be nearby. You'll be safe." She hesitated for only a moment before moving toward the blankets, grateful for the warmth they promised. As she settled down, she felt the weight of the day's journey pressing on her body and mind. But there was also a sense of relief, a quiet recognition that sometimes, even small acts of kindness could restore a sense of security and hope. The hours that followed were quiet. Outside, the night carried on in its usual rhythm, with occasional gusts of wind or distant sounds of passing vehicles. Inside, the room remained a haven, a small space where two people could exist without fear or intrusion. The man moved about quietly, making sure the fire stayed warm and the blankets remained comfortable. He did not speak unnecessarily, did not impose, and did not disrupt the fragile trust that had been established. Through the long hours, the woman reflected on the fragility and importance of human connection. She realized that trust was not something given lightly, but something earned through consistent, thoughtful action. The man's quiet attentiveness, his respect for her space, and his simple promise of safety were small gestures, but they carried profound significance. They reminded her that even in a world that could feel harsh and unkind, there were people who acted with integrity and honor. By the time the first hints of dawn appeared on the horizon, her mind had begun to settle. She felt a sense of gratitude that went beyond mere politeness. It was a deep, human appreciation for someone who had honored their word when she needed it most. She knew that the night had been a test of trust, and that the man had passed without hesitation. The night had also been a time of reflection for him. He had not offered shelter lightly, nor had he taken the responsibility of another person's safety casually. He had watched over her with care, ensuring that the promise he had made was fulfilled without overstepping boundaries. In those quiet hours, he had demonstrated that trust and kindness were not simply abstract ideals, but actions that could be expressed through attentiveness, patience, and respect. When the woman finally drifted into a light, tentative sleep, she carried with her the reassurance that she had been heard, that she had been respected, and that she had been safe. The night, with all its quiet moments and subtle gestures, had become a testament to the power of integrity and the importance of keeping one's word. Though the darkness still lingered outside, it no longer felt threatening. Inside the small shelter, there was warmth, safety, and the quiet knowledge that human connection, even in its simplest form, could bring light to the most uncertain of nights. And when morning would come, she would face it with a sense of cautious hope, knowing that tonight had proven that promises, when truly kept, could change the way one viewed the world. Morning light slowly began to seep through the small windows of the shelter, softening the edges of the room and casting long, gentle shadows across the floor. The first rays of the sun touched the walls, painting the space with warmth and a quiet glow that was almost soothing. Outside, the world was waking up. Birds began their early songs, a gentle breeze rustled through the trees, and distant sounds of daily life slowly crept in. Inside, the room was still, filled with a soft sense of anticipation, as if the night itself had held its breath and was now finally exhaling. The woman stirred gently, blinking against the unfamiliar light. Her body felt rested in a way she had not realized she could feel after so many nights spent on the move, exhausted and alert. She stretched lightly, savoring the warmth of the blankets and the comforting knowledge that she had spent the night in safety. Her thoughts, however, were not completely at ease. The night had been long, quiet, and careful, but it had also been a reminder that trust is never simple or automatic. She looked across the room and noticed the man quietly tending to the morning tasks. He moved with the same calm attentiveness that had marked the previous night, small gestures pouring water into a cup, adjusting the blankets, checking the stove revealed the depth of his consideration. Each action was deliberate, respectful, and thoughtful, showing that his concern for her comfort had not ended with the night. There was no boastfulness in his manner, no expectation that she should repay him in any way. He simply cared for her safety, for her peace of mind, and for the quiet trust that had been built between them. For a few moments, neither spoke. The silence was comfortable, almost reflective, filled with a mutual awareness of the events of the past hours. The woman could feel the weight of the night's experience settling in her mind. She had faced uncertainty, fear, and exhaustion. But she had also encountered something rare. A person who had honored his word without question, without manipulation, and without expectation. That kind of integrity was almost unfamiliar to her, yet deeply reassuring. Eventually, she found her voice. "You kept your word," she said softly, almost hesitantly. The words were simple, but they carried a depth of meaning. In the quiet of the night, she had been able to rest and feel safe, but she had not yet fully processed the impact of his actions. To keep a promise, especially when no one else is watching, is rare. To keep it with such quiet care, without making the other person feel obligated, is even rarer. The man nodded, his expression calm and steady. "I promised you safety for the night," he said. "And that is what you had. That was my responsibility, and I took it seriously. But it is not just about keeping a promise once, it is about understanding the meaning behind it." She listened, intrigued and thoughtful. The words struck a chord with her. Not as a lecture, but as a reflection of something she had been missing for a long time. Trust that was earned through consistent action, not empty words. She realized that the night had been more than just a test of his integrity. It had been a lesson in understanding the true value of promises and in recognizing that safety and care are acts of courage in their own right. As she prepared to rise from the blankets and stretch her tired limbs, she felt a mix of gratitude and lingering uncertainty. She had accepted help, allowed herself to rest, and opened the door, however slightly, to trust. But her question, the one that had been forming in her mind since the first light of dawn, would have to be asked. It was not about the night itself he had proven himself, but about the future. About whether the values and integrity she had glimpsed would extend beyond this single instance. She cleared her throat gently and asked, almost cautiously, "Will you still keep your word?" The question was not accusatory. It was a careful probe into the depth of the man's character. It was a question born from experience, from knowing that promises could be made lightly and broken just as easily. She wanted to understand whether the trust she had begun to place in him was something enduring, or merely a fleeting moment of kindness that would vanish with the morning light. The man regarded her calmly, without surprise or irritation. His eyes met hers steadily, and in that gaze, she saw a quiet honesty, a reflection of the care he had shown throughout the night. "Keeping a word is not always easy," he said. "It takes attention, effort, and understanding. But yes, I will keep my word. Not just for a moment, but for as long as it matters. Safety, respect, and honesty are not things to give lightly. And they are not things to take for granted." Her eyes softened as she listened. The weight of his words, combined with the steady reassurance of his demeanor, allowed her to feel something she had not felt in a long time. Genuine relief. The morning, which could have felt uncertain and intimidating, instead carried a sense of possibility and hope. She realized that trust, once tested and proven, could grow quietly and steadily, like sunlight filtering through the leaves. They moved through the morning together, each action deliberate and calm. The man offered her simple breakfast, warm tea, bread, and fruit without insistence. Giving her the freedom to choose what she needed, she accepted gratefully, feeling that each small act was a continuation of the promise he had made. They spoke gently, exchanging thoughts about the day ahead, practical matters such as travel and directions, and the reality of navigating the world beyond the shelter. Yet even in these ordinary conversations, there was an underlying depth, the acknowledgement of human connection, of mutual respect, and of the quiet power of keeping one's word. The woman found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought her here. She had faced moments of fear and isolation, times when help had been absent and trust had been broken. Yet here, in this small space, she had experienced something rare and meaningful. The man's careful attention, his unwavering calm, and his deliberate actions had shown her that trust could be restored, even if only in small increments. As the morning sun climbed higher, casting stronger light through the windows, she realized that the question she had asked was not merely about the events of last night. It was about human integrity, about understanding whether someone could be relied upon consistently and thoughtfully. And in his response, in the way he carried himself and acted without expectation, she found an answer that reassured her more than words ever could. The quiet moments of the morning were filled with subtle gestures of care. The man ensured that her belongings were ready for the journey ahead, provided maps and guidance for the safest routes, and quietly encouraged her to take her time. There was no hurry, no pressure, only a steady presence that reflected his understanding of the fragile balance between independence and support. She began to feel a sense of empowerment, a quiet confidence that she could move forward, knowing that the trust placed in him had been honored. She reflected on the nature of promises and the responsibility they carry. A promise is not merely a statement, it is an action, a commitment that requires consistency, attention, and thoughtfulness. The man had demonstrated that through the night and into the morning, showing that the value of integrity lies not in grand gestures, but in small, deliberate acts that honor others' safety and dignity. Each moment, from offering shelter to ensuring her comfort, had been a quiet demonstration of this principle. Finally, as the morning continued and the world outside fully awakened, the woman felt a sense of readiness. She had rested, regained strength, and reflected on the rare experience of trust and kindness that had been offered without expectation. The man's presence, calmness, and careful attention had transformed the night into more than just a period of safety. It had become a lesson in the meaning of integrity, and a reminder that human connection, even in its simplest form, can have a profound impact. As she prepared to leave, she turned to him with a quiet smile, a mixture of gratitude and understanding. The question of trust had been answered not through elaborate assurances, but through consistent, thoughtful action. She now knew that promises, when truly honored, can provide not only safety but also hope, confidence, and a renewed sense of faith in humanity. The man simply nodded, a small but meaningful gesture. There were no grand statements, no unnecessary words, only the quiet reassurance that the trust she had placed in him was respected and preserved. In that moment, the morning felt full of possibility. The world outside, once intimidating and uncertain, now seemed navigable, even inviting. She felt ready to face the day, carrying with her the quiet strength that comes from being seen, heard, and protected. The sun climbed higher, illuminating the shelter and signaling the start of a new day. Though the night had been over, its lessons and the trust it had forged remained. She stepped forward, strengthened by the experience, knowing that the promise he had kept was more than a single act. It was a reflection of character, of integrity, and of the quiet power of keeping one's word. And in that early morning light, she realized something important. Trust, once earned through thoughtful action, does not fade with time. It becomes a part of the way one moves through the world, shaping decisions, interactions, and the way one views others. The man had not simply offered safety for the night, he had shown what it means to honor a promise. And in doing so, he had left a lasting impact on her life. The morning continued to unfold slowly, filling the small shelter with warmth and gentle light. The woman sat quietly for a moment, gathering her thoughts, her mind still replaying the events of the night and early morning. The man moved about the space with calm precision, completing the simple tasks that would help her continue her journey. Each small gesture, from arranging the blankets to ensuring she had enough water, was a quiet affirmation of his promise. It was more than just a reflection of responsibility. It was a demonstration of care and respect, and it gave her a sense of confidence she hadn't felt in a long time. She stood and stretched, feeling the lingering stiffness from the long journey that had brought her here. Yet even with tired muscles, there was a lightness in her step, a sense of reassurance that comes from knowing someone's word can be trusted. She glanced at the man, who met her eyes with a quiet nod. There were no grand gestures or dramatic words, only the steady presence of someone who had lived up to his promise. And in that presence, she felt something profound, a renewed faith in the goodness that still existed in the world. "I don't know how to thank you," she said softly. The words felt inadequate compared to the depth of gratitude she felt. It wasn't merely for the safety he had provided during the night, it was for the consistency, the respect, and the integrity he had shown. "You've done more than just keep your word. You've reminded me that there are people who care, even when they don't have to." The man smiled faintly, a small gesture of acknowledgement. "Kindness doesn't need recognition," he said. "It's not about reward or praise. It's about doing what is right, even when no one else is watching." His words were simple but powerful. They carried a weight that resonated deeply with her, emphasizing that integrity is not about grand gestures but about small, deliberate actions that honor others. As she prepared to leave, she took a moment to gather her belongings, organizing them neatly and checking that she had everything she needed. The man offered guidance, pointing out the safest routes for travel and giving advice about landmarks and directions. Each suggestion was practical, thoughtful, and delivered with quiet respect for her autonomy. He did not insist. He did not dominate. And he did not make her feel obligated in any way. The guidance was offered as a continuation of the promise he had made to ensure her safety, even beyond the shelter. She paused at the door, feeling the warmth of the morning sun on her face. The world outside, once intimidating and uncertain, now seemed more approachable. The fear that had accompanied her journey had not vanished entirely, but it had been tempered by the experience of trust and care she had received. She realized that safety is not only physical, it is emotional and mental as well. Being treated with respect, being listened to, and being protected without expectation, all contributed to a sense of security that was just as important as any shelter or warm blanket. The man stood quietly beside her, allowing her the space to decide when she was ready to move forward. There was no rush, no pressure, only the steady assurance that he would honor his word until the very last moment. She reflected on the nature of promises and the responsibility they carry. To give someone safety, comfort, and respect is not merely an act of generosity, it is a demonstration of integrity. And to uphold that promise consistently, even in small ways, is a rare and valuable quality. She took a deep breath, feeling a mixture of gratitude, relief, and renewed confidence. The night had been more than a test of trust. It had been a lesson in human connection, in understanding that true care does not require recognition or repayment. The man had shown that the essence of a promise lies in action, not words, and that trust can be rebuilt, even after experiences that might have eroded it over time. As she stepped outside, the sunlight fully illuminated the world around her. The air was crisp, carrying the fresh scent of trees and morning dew. The streets were beginning to fill with the sounds of life, the hum of distant traffic, the chatter of neighbors starting their day, the rustle of birds in the trees. Each sound was a reminder that life moves forward, and that every day carries new possibilities. She felt a sense of readiness and strength, knowing that the trust she had placed had been honored and that she could continue her journey with a sense of assurance. The man walked with her to the edge of the path, pointing out landmarks and giving clear guidance for the safest route to her next destination. His presence was steady but unobtrusive, offering support without overstepping boundaries. Each step, each word, was a continuation of the promise he had made to provide safety, respect, and guidance. It was clear that his integrity was not limited to a single night, but extended into the morning, and would continue to guide her actions even after she left the shelter. As she prepared to part ways, she turned to him with a smile, feeling the depth of gratitude that could not be expressed fully in words. "Thank you," she said once more, "for everything. For your care, for your attention, for keeping your word. It means more than I can explain. The man nodded quietly, a simple acknowledgement that carried as much weight as any elaborate speech could. Take care of yourself, he said. Trust your instincts, and remember that not all promises are broken. Some are meant to be kept, and some people are meant to be trusted. His words lingered, not as a command but as a reflection, a quiet truth she could carry with her long after she left. She began walking along the path, her steps lightened by the knowledge that the world contained people who honored their word. Each movement was a small celebration of the trust she had experienced, and a reminder that kindness and integrity are not abstract concepts. They are lived, moment by moment, through actions both big and small. Along the way, she reflected on the significance of the night and morning. It was not merely a story of safety, but a story of human connection, resilience, and the profound impact of integrity. The man had provided more than shelter. He had offered a model of reliability, care, and thoughtful action. Through his behavior, he had shown that promises matter, that trust can be rebuilt, and that even small acts of kindness can leave lasting impressions. The day continued to brighten, the sun rising higher and bathing the path in warmth. The woman felt a renewed sense of purpose and strength. She knew that challenges still lay ahead, that the journey was not over, but she carried with her a sense of confidence and reassurance that came from experiencing genuine trust and care. The lessons of the night, the value of keeping one's word, the quiet power of integrity, and the importance of thoughtful action would guide her in the days to come. As she moved further along the path, she found herself smiling quietly, thinking of the man who had honored his promise without expectation or condition. It was a reminder that integrity is not measured by grand gestures, but by consistent, deliberate acts of care. She realized that every person has the potential to make a difference through their actions, and that trust, once earned, can change the way one experiences the world. By the time she reached the edge of the town, where her journey would take her into new challenges and opportunities, she felt a sense of completion and closure. The night of uncertainty had transformed into a morning of clarity, guidance, and hope. She had experienced the rare and meaningful impact of someone keeping their word, and it had left a lasting impression on her understanding of human connection and trust. Looking back one last time, she saw the man standing quietly near the shelter, a figure of calm and integrity. There was no need for words. The shared understanding between them was enough. The promise had been kept, and in keeping it, he had shown her that even in a world filled with uncertainty, some people can be trusted, some promises can be relied upon, and some acts of kindness endure beyond the moment they are offered. With renewed strength and a heart filled with gratitude, she continued her journey, carrying the lessons of the night and morning with her. She knew that the memory of this experience would guide her decisions, shape her understanding of trust, and remind her of the quiet but profound power of integrity. The man had not only offered safety, he had offered a living example of what it means to honor one's word, and that lesson would remain with her long after she left the shelter behind. The world ahead was full of possibilities, and she faced it with a newfound confidence. The path was not without obstacles, but the experience of being cared for, respected, and trusted had strengthened her in ways that went beyond physical safety. She walked with awareness, with purpose, and with a quiet sense of hope that even in moments of uncertainty, there are people who act with integrity and keep their promises. And so, the journey continued. But the memory of the night, the morning, and the man who had honored his word remained, a testament to the enduring power of trust, kindness, and thoughtful action. It was a reminder that even small acts of integrity can leave lasting impressions, and that the true measure of a person lies not in words alone, but in the promises they keep and the care they show to others.